All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is the Courageous Career Conversations series, part one. And we're really excited to see you all here. You're in for a great presentation and experience today. So our topic today is, so this is going to be a three-part series of workshops. One today, and then another one in February, and another one in April. Today's topic is how to check if a company's diversity, equity, and inclusion commitment is for real. How authentic are they? Are they really walking their talk, basically? We're going to dive into that. And as you're looking into company culture and company initiatives and commitments, how do you really investigate to get the real true story, especially around things that align with your values and what you're interested in? So my name is Megan Spalding. I'm the director of the Albers Placement Center. The Albers Placement Center is the career center for the business school. So we help support grad and undergrad and alumni of Albers in all things career planning and career exploration. And this workshop is also in partnership with the Career Engagement Office. There are colleagues who kind of basically do the same thing we do and serve science and engineering students and arts and sciences students. So this is a joint event. So really excited to be partnering on this today. Just a couple housekeeping items. If you could make sure to stay muted while we're doing the presentation, that would be helpful. But if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to raise your hand or put the questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, and then there will definitely be time to ask questions towards the end. So, okay, so let me introduce you to our wonderful speaker we're so excited to have here today. So Kimfer Flannery Rye is the founder and principal consultant for My Kimisms, LLC, a social enterprise focused on the IDEA. IDEA is an acronym for inclusion equals diversity plus equity plus accessibility. And the enterprise, the focus is to build culture from the inside out. And the idea to address systemic issues, we must tackle the inequities within organizational systems. Kimfer is a seasoned professional with 20 plus years of experience with a diverse background in digital marketing, executive leadership, and organizational development, just to name a few. We are lucky she is an adjunct professor teaching creativity and innovation for MBA students here in Albers. And then she's an alum. She got her MBA in executive leadership. So, and she's also a mentor in the Albers Mentor Program. So definitely giving back a lot. We really appreciate it. So Kimfer, welcome. Thank you for doing this, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Hi, everyone. I love when I am able to do this for a group of this size, because that means we can have some good, I think, conversations. It is a workshop. This is not me just lecturing. It's not a lecture. And so we will be actively together today, and there will be a lot of the time is going to be in breakouts where you'll be doing some practical application in how we can really figure this out if companies are just, spouting some BS and being performative or not, especially if you're doing a job search and you're looking at all the things on the internet. We want to try to get a sense of how things are. So I know Megan just gave a lot of my, professional side, but I always like to say just it's important to get to know people so that, I'm not just all the things that are about like, oh, her education and this and that. But I'm also part of my intersectional being, especially as a consultant for DEI, I like to sort of put some of those out there, is that I am a Korean born woman. I am part of the LGBTQIA community, but it's also interesting because I look very straight because of this white-haired man that you see I've been married to for 24 years, also a Seattle U alum and a mentor for Seattle U. I am a mother of a 15-year-old that you see right down here, who is over 6 feet at this point. I don't understand how that is happening. And my COVID dog that you see here, his name is Yeti. He is my buddy. And then our cat Roro, or Rodeo the cat, who is not that excited about our dog. And aside from the personal side, I also do a lot of speaking engagements locally and internationally. And one of the big stages there, that was me at Davos, Switzerland, speaking at the World Economic Forum, which I will be doing next week as well. So that'll be year 2 for me. So that's super cool. So that's a little bit about me at a personal level. And it's great to meet you. Hopefully I'll get to know a few of you as we go through this as well. So agenda, pretty concise session today. We'll do a land acknowledgement, I think, which is very important. We'll go through the learning objective, because I think we're all used to having learning objectives going into school. I always like to start any workshop with some shared language so that we're all starting at the same point. We'll do a breakout session, which will be the primary of this session. I'm going to put you to work. I always say do the work. And then we'll talk about following up with just why doing that is important, and how the impact of DEI and brands really impact the culture. And then what's coming up next for part 2 and 3. Even though this is a 3-part series, people can take one or the other. You don't have to, you can show up for the second one. So if you wanted to tell your friends and say, hey, come join, they don't have to be part of the first one. They're discreet, but also really good if you do go through them as well. So with that, just a quick land acknowledgement. I think, for non-Indigenous communities, it's really important for us to really think about the powerful way that we can show respect for the original folks that have been on this land. And for us here in the greater Seattle area, we are on the Duwamish tribe lands. And for us, I think it's really, it's simple, but also good to acknowledge that. For those of you who might be dialing in from elsewhere, I'm not sure if you're all dialing in from here, there is a land map, which is native-land.ca that you can go to and figure out what lands that you're on. And it might be interesting for you to do if you are also born elsewhere, your families are elsewhere, and things like that. And there's ways for you to figure out how can you do reparations, how to support. And here in Seattle for the Duwamish, there is you can actually pay real rent to the Duwamish. And I do that actually because I am a consultant. I don't need an office anywhere. So I pay equivalent to a co-working space every month to the Duwamish tribe. That's a way for me to really be part of and showing reparations. So, all right, learning objectives. As you know, we're in a university, so I think every class you have learning objectives. So really what we're looking to do by the end of this workshop, this session, is practical skills. So we're looking at practical skills, tools that you can use to systematically just research organizations, right? So obviously many of you are students, and if you are looking at and doing research around organizations that you might thinking about going into apply, things like that, unless you have a really strong contact in that organization, you really are looking at it from the outside, right? From the outside, how can you gauge these things? So hopefully with this session, again, practical guide for you to assess how an organization's commitment to DEI is it legit? Is it just a statement that's just sitting out there? How about also evaluating an organization's culture? How can you do that, again, from the outside looking in? And then hopefully that will give you an opportunity to narrow that selection with a little bit more confidence, greater confidence in your career search and how best match that organization that you might want to work with, work for, or partner with. Okay. Before we get started, any questions, any thoughts, any chats? Feel free to use them. Again, the size of our group is like that perfect amount where we can have good conversations throughout. So feel free to use those chats as you like. Share language. So, I mean, obviously, if you're here, you are familiar with diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are a multitude of ways to look at that definition. But just so that way we're all starting from sort of the same perspective, I just picked a couple of like really simple, easy definitions out there, right? Diversity, all the ways in which people differ. Okay, that could be your race, your gender, it could be your age, it could be your national, all the various ways that makes up you. Equity is really about that fair treatment and access and opportunity for everyone, not to get confused with equality, right? Equality means the same thing for everyone, even if they need it or not, versus equity is giving the right things for the people that are needed, right? And then the last one, inclusion. This is where you have that opportunity, that power, the voice to speak up, and be part of that group or whatever it is and feel included. And ultimately, all of that brings us to that sense of belonging. I really like this quote by, his name is Arthur Chan. He really simplified DEI and belonging as diversity is a fact, right? So demographics, you can look at it, right? A lot of companies will put a lot of demographics data out there. So in that sense, diversity is a fact. Equity is a choice. You make the choice to how you want to engage and how to bring that fairness out to everyone. Inclusion is an action in which you bring people in. So that way the belonging is the outcome of it all. So I thought, really love that simple way of thinking about DEI. Okay. The other thing that we're going to be talking about with organizations is around their culture, organizational culture. So organizational culture is really this idea of how the identity, the values, the beliefs, and then the interactions that happen in an organization. And that is implicitly or explicitly stated. So implicit things are, even though nowhere, anywhere in the company documents, in policies or values or anything like that, it's how people kind of do things, right? Even if the values say, hey, we're transparent, but people are acting as like everything is secretive, that is the implicit value that's happening, right? So ultimately it creates that social environment and then psychological makeup of the people within it. That's where you hear a lot about that words, psychological safety, I think, is a really popular word right now. So that's the two areas that we're going to be looking at. And then this is where it comes down to the nuts and bolts. When people are looking at websites and they're like, okay, I see DI statements, I see promises, I see commitments. Is there a difference? Right? And that's what we're really gonna go into. I have to say, like, what is that? The phrase about name by any other name, you know, rose by any other name is still a rose. So if you think about it, it could be called, in companies, they might call it a statement, they might call it a promise, they might call it a commitment. It's really about like, what are they doing though, ultimately? So some companies will literally have a statement that says, we believe. There's a lot of like, we believe in equality, we believe in diversity, we believe in inclusion, but there's no like promises or commitments in how they're going to get there. That even if they call it a commitment, but it's all it is their belief statements, you can kind of go like, what are they doing about that? Maybe they also call it a statement. However, they have all these promises. By 2025, we're looking to do this, right? Those are the promises. And then the commitments might be where we're showing that data over and over as we're increasing or changing. So again, it's not necessarily about like, is it called a statement, a promise, a commitment? It's about like, can you get down to the next click down and see what are they doing with whatever that they have on their website, right? So that's one of the areas that we're looking at. Okay. Any thoughts and questions now before we move? Okay. You are all proving that I am a really amazing facilitator right now. No questions at all. Okay. All right, so this is where we're gonna get to the heart of the situation, right? It's not about me droning on and on, but it's about giving you practical application and how to do that. If you are out there searching for a job, if you are out there just checking to see what's happening, it is one of the ways in which we can do this. And Megan is working on putting you in breakout groups. So we're gonna have 3 people or 2 people in each group, no more than 3. Partly because this is one of those places where we're gonna do things very systematically, and there's a big checklist I'm gonna give you. Okay, so Megan just put a link to where you can access this really large audit checklist, okay? This is kind of funny when I use a word checklist, because people always say like DEI is not a checklist. You are absolutely right. However, when you're auditing something, you need to use a checklist. So this is why it's here. When you go into your breakout, and Megan, I want to make sure that folks get as much time as they can. So let's do, let's see, 25 minutes. How much time will that give us? 15 minutes at the end? For
Let me see, we're at 12:50, Kimper. So maybe 20 minutes, maybe?
20 minutes. Okay. If you can set everyone up for 20 minutes. First things first, I don't know if you'll know each other, so please introduce yourselves and why you decided to attend this event. Okay. Again, let everyone speak. You have, a minute or so to just introduce yourself, so that way you're not just jumping in. Choose someone to be the note taker, meaning pull this down from where the share drive and actually do the auditing together. Okay, and then choose someone to be the speaker for the group. So when we come back, we're going to have a conversation together, what you found, what you think, what is the summary you kind of came up with for an organization. Okay, so when you get together, I want you to pick a company that you want to research. Maybe it's a large company, maybe it's a small company. It's up to you, okay? And create put that company that you want to talk through, and then go through this audit checklist together and see where you end up. And the checklist, again, will really walk you through it. And I'll have questions. You're going to say yes or no. You're going to have areas where you can put some notes to give you some more context. And then you're going to also give yourself, like, is this a deal breaker for me? Yes, no, maybe. So you're going to put all of those together so that you can get a whole picture of that organization. Obviously, it's really great if you have access to someone who works there, so their information might go on that summary section too, so that way you had some insights from them. But right now, we're not going to have that access. And because of it, this checklist is really from an outsider's perspective, right? Outside looking in. Okay.
Kimper, you're going to visit breakout
Yes.
groups, right? Come around and help. I'm hoping
Yes.
everybody saw it. I put the link, the documents on our SU SharePoint. You should all hopefully be able to access it and hopefully be able to download it, so you can have this and keep it and use it as you're doing your own company research in the future. If you have any issues getting the document, please put it in the chat. And then staff will be with you in breakout rooms too, right, Justin? Are we good?
Yeah, I'll probably have to manually assign staff afterwards, but
That's okay. Okay, so we'll come in and help and participate too, because this is all good learning for us too.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Maybe you should audit CRU.
Yeah,
No. But anyway, so I will be bouncing around from room to room. It's really awkward. I'm not gonna lie. When someone just pops into a breakout room, there's no graceful way like you can if we were in a room together and you're at tables. I can just kind of walk by and say hello and see how things are happening. Instead, here I'm just gonna be like, boop, there I am. Ignore me, pretend like I'm not there. I'm just kind of like listening in. Unless you have questions, obviously I'll answer those, but it's just me just feeling, trying to mimic as much of being in a room together with you. So with that, any questions? Anyone have any challenges with access or anything like that? Okay, so everyone knows the 4 areas. I should probably put this on the chat, but introduce yourself, choose someone to be a note taker, choose someone to be a speaker, pick a company, and go at it. Okay. All right. How How was it? How was it for everyone? Let's start with group one. Do you remember who was going to be speaking on behalf of your group? Okay, Abigail.
Yeah, so do I just share what we
Yeah,
looked
what
up?
was your
Okay.
company that you researched? Some good insights that you might have gathered.
Yeah, so we looked into a company called HNTB, an infrastructure firm, and we saw that on their website. They definitely posted a lot of pictures with a lot of people of color, and they didn't go too into depth about how they approach DEI specifically, just more descriptions or claims. But then when we looked at their social medias and their LinkedIn, um, the demographic wasn't really the same as what they posted on their website, which is interesting. I also interned for them, and I definitely noticed that the demographics were similar to what they posted on their socials.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the Indeed and comparably, the ratings are pretty different on the two websites. But work happiness on Indeed was at a 63, and comparably it was around like an 80.
Yeah. So this is part of the reason why I have you look at various sites, because you can't just look at one, right? Because it depends on who's more attracted to or the used to the account. So you're trying to get a flavor, get a good view across the board. You're looking for some consistencies and things like that, right? So when there's inconsistencies, then it kind of puts a question in your mind. Yeah. Yeah. Great. And also, I think I put a note out there, and I'll make sure that I adjust that document, Megan, and we'll re-upload it. But you should definitely look at the leadership team. Always look at the leadership team makeup, and always look at if they're a public company, look at their board makeup or their advisory board makeup. That also says a lot as well, right? Okay, awesome. Thanks, Abigail. Who was in team 2 or group 2? Okay, Alex.
So we took a look at Robert Half, which is the company that I work for, and it was interesting because we did kind of our audit of their website and all that sort of stuff. So it came a little close to home because I actually work on their website. So it was interesting kind of looking at it from, from a different sort of lens and a little bit more of an outside perspective. What we found that was a little bit tricky with it was that essentially it differs from a lot of other company websites in the sense that it's providing a service first and foremost. So essentially, like, whereas most other company websites are meant to essentially kind of talk about what the company does, our main objective is to get people in the door as a client or as a candidate and apply and help them apply to a job, or help us fill a position for them. So the resources that we were looking for with regards to culture and DEI and all of that sort of stuff was there. It's just you had to look for it a little bit more. It wasn't top of the fold. It was more down below. The stuff was there and readily available. They had a specific DEI page. They had mention of goals. They didn't publish any demographics or any of that sort of stuff. It just took a little while to get there. Then we had a really good discussion about whether or not that would be enough, as somebody who's looking to join the company or do anything like that. From a socials and Glassdoor, LinkedIn perspective, they do mention diversity front and center. They have that as a priority for them, and for the most part, like they're ranked pretty well from a Glassdoor perspective. I want to say it was like a 4 out of 5, and their diversity score exceeded their overall score, at least on Glassdoor, which was pretty good. Seems like it's pretty well regarded. The thing that I found that I was looking for with with Glassdoor in particular, or any sort of review site, you want like a lot of reviews. It can't just come from like a handful of people and say, yeah, everything's great. Like you want to see like a critical mass there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seemed like they had that. So it seems like they're kind of trending in the right direction and doing the right stuff, which made me feel better about where I work. So
That's great. Yeah, I know it's always difficult when you have like that agency model that you have, or a placement model that you have, but you have to remember part of it is you're still trying to attract consultants
yeah,
or people. So then you're going to want to showcase that. So
100%.
you know that that's the place you want to join. Yeah,
Mhm.
awesome. Group 3.
Is that our group? I think.
Yeah.
Okay, we looked at Costco. And Costco tries to sell you things, so that was that was the focus of the website. But we did find the career website and no mention of DEI, no mention of culture. There was on their website homepage, on their about page, there was a mention on their career page at the very bottom. So it was not front and center. It was a little footnote, and then when you click through, it was very, very brief. 2 on our team felt like it was a deal breaker. I didn't, just because I have a positive impression of Costco as a workplace coming in. So that was and we didn't get too far on the list, but one thing I did find that I was new to me was on Glassdoor, you can sort the ratings by demographic. And there's race, ethnicity, there's gender, sexual orientation, disability, or parent or family caregiver, and veteran status. And that I'm going to peruse that. So Costco, the ratings were really similar across the race and ethnicities. I'm curious to see overall if it varies, if certain races or ethnicities give lower overall ratings. So that would be something to have, benchmark against. And I would love to see age on there, because that's my particular, I experience ageism.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm experiencing looking for a job.
Yeah.
Anyone have anything else to add from our team?
I was just gonna say, when you go to career and about us, there wasn't a lot, and then finally went to the bottom and there was a sustainability link, and then there was a ton of information there around human rights, people and culture, but you had to go into sustainability. I'm not sure I would have made that connection, which is interesting. Interesting for myself too, as I think through that. Why wouldn't I connect those together? So yeah.
So interesting enough, there's a huge intersection between DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ESG, right, environmental social governance, and social corporate responsibility. So that there is a intersection there. And also, as a DEI consultant, I often get pinged by people who own one of those, right? So some organizations, it's interesting that I get brought in through ESG, or I get brought through social corporate responsibility, depending on the size or how or who's kind of driving that. They tend to sort of meld together. But it makes sense for a company like Costco, where supply chain and how they impact the environment and how do they deal with the global governance and things like that is a massive area. And traditionally Costco brought people from the inside, right? So there's a lot less external recruiting that they used to do. I don't know about now, but maybe. But anyway, awesome. Group 4
is group 4 us.
I think so. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Costco a little bit more. Actually, it's interesting that when I interned there last year, they have like all the interns. They own a little movie theater right next to Costco, which I thought was really cool. And every now and then we'd have like scheduled meetings where all the interns would have to go there and they talk about like different stuff. And then some of them that took the longest amount of time or the most in depth were like the culture and sustainability. But outside of that, I never really, it wasn't really never marketed, but they do like still hire like pretty like within itself. And then within Costco, they do a lot more like educating about that, but not necessarily outward like you guys mentioned. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah.
And then we did the publicly traded stock Nike, and then Nike's homepage didn't necessarily talk about DEI or culture, but if you go to the about page or career page, they do have a lot of information about it with different tabs from stories, culture, DEI separately, and statistics of where they're at now from fiscal year 21 and goals that they hope to reach in fiscal year 22 and so on. it seems like their goals were definitely adequate and doable. So I thought that was pretty good. They also have a lot about innovation and culture within how they make their products.
Oh, we just lost them. Anyone from that group wants to finish that out? Okay, awesome. Okay. I think there is one other group.
Yeah, we were group 5. There was not a company that any of us were particularly passionate about, so we did Amazon because it'd just be interesting to see where they're at, and I haven't looked at them like through a methodical lens as far as their diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, they are a retail company, you know, when you go to their website, and so there wasn't a lot directly on that page, and so we had to dig a little. We were using different browsers, and I found, from my experience, I was using Edge. Yes, I'm one of the rare people that does that. None of it just popped up. I literally had to hover over things that didn't have words on it to see anything about diversity, equity, and inclusion. For the other people in my group, they were using Chrome, and they were able to see that whenever they went on the pages, they could actually see the words, you know, diversity or culture and that sort of thing. That being said, we didn't really find any actionable like task lists or goals. We didn't see anything that said we're doing this. They had their current numbers, you know, as far as, you know, diversity within the organization. So, you know, whenever I go to their site, there's a lot of pictures of diverse people and talk about work. I think one of the first things I saw was, how do you make more money at Amazon? Yeah. And I thought, well, you know, that's indirectly mentioning their culture. But, you know, overall, we didn't see a lot. That's about as far as we got. And we didn't talk about whether it was a deal breaker or not, because we weren't really thinking about them as a place to apply to. But, you know, the checklist, I think, for me is incredibly helpful, because, you know, you kind of just futz around on a web page and you don't really, you just kind of make mental note and, you know, kind of get that gut feeling. But this actually is a really nice tool to actually go through it in a methodical way. So that whenever you do get that interview, you know, you have some sort of research and basis to go in there and have some questions ready.
Yeah. So that's, you know, again, that was the whole purpose of today's session, was to provide you with things that are practical. Like, because a lot of this is like, how do you take all this information, again, from an outsider's perspective? If you don't have an insider's perspective, you need to be able to assess in some way. And most people do it. Like you were saying, Rachel, you are doing it. You just don't know. You're just not having it in like a way that you can have an overarching sort of scoring system or ways to look at it to give your gut that additive information, right? So we have just a minute left. Let me just go through the last bit of this information here. Which one are you seeing? Just a single? Or all of my slides?
All of your slides.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah, one slide.
Okay, great. So then really the thing that we want to think about is that, why is this important, right? So because if you think about a company and the brand, if you put those together, the culture is the heart and soul, right? So culture is impacted by all of the things. I know some of you had questions like, we didn't see a whole lot of culture stuff, but we saw some DEI stuff. Culture is encompassing. So if you don't see DEI, that probably says a lot about the culture, right? So that's one way to look at it. Also, from a culture perspective, they may not even say things like, hey, this is culture, but you'll definitely see this is DEI or whatnot, right? So it's a way to kind of look through it in that sense. And then from there, it's not about that DEI. It's not about just impacting brands. What you really have to think about it is that it is vital and it has to be integrated, right? That's why if you don't hear anything or see anything externally Like, how do you know? Just because it's external doesn't mean it's also good. Part of the reason why I'm asking you to look at all of these various pages, because I have seen enough organizations where there's that one little like snippet. Here's that statement, and it's not integrated anywhere else on their website. It's not on their social media. It doesn't show up on their rankings from, you know, like I said, Glassdoor or any of those things from their employees, or maybe they have lower scores or whatnot. So this is why you want to get a holistic picture beyond all of that, because really all of that is what results in culture. And then for those of you who are interested in part 2 and part 3, we'll just kind of build on this, but again, you can come in straight into part 2 with or without that first part. Next thing will be like, now that you might have done this assessment, is it worth the risk? And how do you approach, and what are the things that you want to, what are the okay things to ask in those interviews? What are the things, how do you get to the heart of it and in those scenarios? So we'll talk about that again, practical guides. We're talking about really practical guides. And then the one after that is like, now you have a job, you're in an organization. How do you have additional conversations? How do you work within it? In the organizations from a place of equity, from a place of belonging, and all of that. So that's where we're looking at. But other than that, everyone, thank you so much for being part of it. And I hope you find that audit list. I'll make that a little bit of an adjustment about the leadership and the board. But beyond that, hopefully it's a tool that you can use as you sort of jump into evaluating the organizations from an outside looking in.
Great. Thank you, Kim, for so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope it was really helpful for you. We've got, I'll try to email that out. We'll have the attendance list, and I hope I can figure out who all of you are. And we'll send out the email of the updated list, but we hope this was helpful. Thank you for coming. We hope we'll see you in February as well for the next part. Spread the word. If you have friends who are going through, peers or colleagues who are going through all of this too, and we'd love to see you there. So Kimber, thank you so much. Hope you all have a good rest of the day.
Thanks.